private sector, public sector, so I kind of have a range of perspective to share. And my goal for the next hour and a half is to sit up here and talk about land use, maybe kind of get a little sleepy and dry. You know, land use is exciting, right? It's fun and fascinating and all those things. No, we're gonna engage, that's the goal. So what I'd like to do is kind of get into a dialogue with y'all. I would like to have an interaction on this. Feel free to ask questions. I'd like to try to really focus on areas that I think could maybe help you and help your clients, better understanding of zoning, land use, and regulations that we're working with. We have some policy stuff at the end. I'm happy to get into that, but I'd like to kind of stay away from policy during the bulk of the conversation. I think we go down some rabbit holes with that. If you do have an example of maybe something that you're dealing with or working with a client that you think would be valuable for us to talk about to give a global kind of perspective on that, I'm happy to do that. So no problem there. So again, let's just get into it and we'll engage. Who in here likes land use? I love it. It's affecting everybody from the moment that they're coming into this world to the moment that they're leaving this world. And it's something that affects everybody and they don't even know it. Whether it was good planning or poor planning, we usually know and have those pain points of the poor planning, and the good planning, just kind of everything runs smoothly and seamlessly. We live on Big Island, it's very, very challenging, as you know. All right, dual land use system. Who understands we have a dual land use system in the state of Hawaii? Okay, state land use. If you guys know, for those of you that really know this, don't act smart, let's talk about everybody else. What are the four, what's one of the four state land uses? Yep. Yep.
Rural.
Yep.
Conservation.
Okay. Who's got jurisdiction over conservation?
DLNR.
Okay, perfect. How much, okay, I'll give $1 who knows this question. Who knows how much rural we have on this island? Rural state land use?
80%.
5%.
Looking for acreage or percentage?
Percentage acres, I'll take anything close within 3%. I'll even make it $5.
I'm not
I don't have any
close.
cash on me, but I think I owe you. Never find me.
30%.
Less than one?
It's less than one.
Wow. Rural?
Rural. 0.003, constituting about 803 acres. So for example, like the Makalei golf course property, that's like 1,000 acres, that's bigger than all the rural we have on the entire island. Kind of weird, right, when we live in a rural island?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
what-
much lava, why isn't that?
Great question. And so,
Rest is ag.
so why did that happen, right? We're in such a rural area. A lot of places that we have communities in, zoned ag, but have much more of a rural type feel and used to it. So what happened was, the exact dates don't count me on, but when we basically came into zoning, came into state land use, after statehood, we had our urban areas somewhat defined by settlement patterns and plantation. That was kind of easy. So, okay, Kailua Kona will have, urban there, Honoka'a will have urban, Hilo urban, Waimea urban, Nalelu urban, no problem, all those make sense. And then they said, okay, the big areas, obviously at Malka and certain areas on the coast, conservation makes a lot of sense. Then they went to the prime ag lands and they said, all of this, we're gonna do state land use agriculture, seems to be the most appropriate state land use for these prime ag lands. The rest of it, they said, we don't really know what we wanna do with it. Let's do a placeholder and we'll call it ag. Just a placeholder on it, we'll just call it ag right now because the growth, the settlement patterns aren't gonna expand that fast. We'll call it ag and we'll come back and deal with it later. And so this isn't me making it up. I was just at a presentation on Oahu. I had one of the state AGs, attorney generals there, giving the same example. And he's been through a lot there. So this is known, but there's irony in this. So we'll do it. We'll come back and we'll fix it later. So ag, Ocean View.
Yeah.
Ag?
Yeah, what are you gonna go with?
Paradise Park. Ag? I don't know, right? Probably not. So what happened was that at one point, the State Land Use Commission and the state would go around and they'd do district boundary amendments. They'd go do a study on it and say, hey, the settlement pattern's changing. This area, let's open up for more urban, let's open up for more rural, more ag, etc. And then that changed at some point where the State Land Use Commission said, we're not gonna do that anymore. You want something changed, come see us. Deal with us, submit an application, we'll put you through the process. And we no longer have this proactive settlement pattern change. We now have a reactive, submit your application, and things have kind of stalled. And now we have all of this land that's not truly ag, that's sitting in ag, and it's really hard to change it. And there's entire communities that should be rural. So we've talked a lot with the state about trying to get more rural in there. They're open to it. How is the question, especially when you have, complete areas completely bifurcated that are already subdivided out. You have to get everybody on board. You have takings, conversations, etc. So there's just some. I just wanted to kind of share that we have very little rural. We should have a lot, and we have about 4% urban on the island, 0.0003% rural, and the rest is split almost 50-50 ag and conservation. So one of my favorite things that you folks probably experience, that I experience on a regular basis, is I looked at your agriculture zoning, and it says I can do whatever, camping. And you'll come to us, the planning department, and we'll say, no, you can't do camping. And then the person will say, well, no, it says in your code that you can. We'll say, no, we cannot. Do you know why that is? What governs
State land use.
state land use ag?
Yeah.
And it's a big area of misunderstanding for a lot of folks in our community. I'm sure most of you have probably already been through this many of different times, but I just want to underscore that 205 is really what governs the state land use and the SMA side of things. And so if it's not on the permitted use under 205, then it really can't be done. So then you might ask, well, you have an agriculture district in your zoning code. Why do you have that in there then? Aren't you giving us false information? No, because the property, the underlying state land use doesn't have to be agriculture, right? So you can have an ag zoning over the top of rural or even urban. And then all those features that you would get in the ag zoning would be possible. But that state land use always jams people up, and it's constant. Does that make sense? Or any questions around that?
It makes sense, but it makes no sense.
Welcome to land use in Hawaii. Or I find the 205, HRS. Google HRS 205, and on that you'll go through HRS 205A, you'll find your SMA, and you'll find the permitted use for agriculture. So for example, one of the things they did is they said, we want to support renewable energy, so let's allow solar fields to be permitted on state land use. You'll see that within the state land use ag under HRS 205. Now, if it's class A or B soils, you still have to go to the land use commission. So we just had a RFP out from Helco for some large utility scale solar projects. There were a couple awarded, one out Puako area, another one up Waimea area, and another one in Hilo in Kaiviki area. It has B soils. So they have to go to the state land use commission to actually get approval to actually do the array there, even though they won the RFP from Helco. So there's some nuance there. So if you have a project, so we have the state side. If it's urban or rural, our zoning rules, right? If it's urban, we're good. County zoning takes precedence, no problem. So if you're urban, if you have state land use, urban or rural, you don't really need to worry about this caveat. It's the state land use ag that you have the challenge with, and then it's obviously it's conservation. Then that needs to go to DLNR. Make sense? Ish. Enough? Yeah. Okay. Anything else on state land use? You guys are familiar with size limits on where we have county jurisdiction and where? Yes,
So
sir.
your reason for wanting more rural would be what? What would the county's reason for wanting that they can control more land without having to go through the state? Is that, or are there other reasons?
There are there's multiple reasons. One, we have a lot of settlement patterns that would just make sense for rural. You have half-acre lots, 1-acre lots, they're really not ag. But we have a bigger challenge, and at the state level, there's a push for prime agriculture land. There's a push to preserve agriculture land. Makes a lot of sense. But I'll be talking to the state land use, commissioner, and they're like, hey, are you guys going out there and making sure that everybody on ag land is doing farming? You live on ag? You do farming? If you don't, I need to come penalize you.
Really?
But that's not practical on the Big Island at all. We're gonna make criminals out of so many people. And so I say, until we can get our state land use in order, until we get our house cleaned, it's hard to do that. Now, if it's prime soils, that's another conversation. And so we should be moving that conversation, really should be soils based as one potential idea to kind of help solve for that, because there's a lot of challenge around that conversation. So in an ideal world, our ag land would be truly ag, and that ag land would be being used for some type of farming. But when you take 50% of the island as ag, and the intent was, well, it's kind of a placeholder, we'll come back and clean it up later. How do we manage that? And so that's one of the big reasons that I'd really like to see things kind of be cleaned up, so you have continuity, and it's better. Yes, sir?
Why does the county, I mean, the state's part of the problem, but why does the county not change the zoning in a place like Kona Palisades? Why is it 5 acre ag?
Right.
And why has it not been changed to residential? Then people would think I'm an idiot when I tell them it's non-conforming.
Yeah.
Because the county at that level, so we're gonna go in there, we can't do a blanket change,
You have to ask everybody?
otherwise it's taking.
You have to ask the individual owners, you mean?
So if I went into your property and let's say you were zoned ag and I said, I'm changing your property, how do you feel about that? You might like it because you're like, I really wanted that, but if you don't like it, I don't want you to change. I don't want government coming in and telling me what to do and changing my zoning. It becomes a takings conversation. It's the same situation like we have, I mean, HPP is such a great example. Most of you are familiar with Paradise Park, second largest subdivision in the United States, 1 acre lots, rural by nature, general plan, rural. Wouldn't it just be logical that we come in as a county and say, rural element? We can't. It would be an application process. So what I've thought about doing is setting up a simple application process to say, hey, if you want to come in and you want to change it, here's the application. It's almost boilerplate. We'll send it through. We'll support it, but it's got to be the individuals taking charge of that, or at the state level doing some type of broad brush on it. And so we're challenged at the county level to do that. Now, if the whole community got together and wanted to do it, it'd make it a lot easier. We could support that. Any other questions on that? So you brought up nonconformities. I love nonconformities. They're just awesome. Your clients probably love them because they make sense, right? So you got a 10,000 square foot lot, zoned ag 1. What do you do for your setbacks?
10,000
We
square.
go to you.
Residential, under 10,000, residential lot size of
Right.
or something.
Perfect, exactly. So we go to the residential classification on those setbacks and apply those setbacks based on the land size. It's just another confusing area that people don't totally get. Why did those nonconformities, why do all of those little lots exist in the ways that they do? Anybody know?
Because at the time that Kona Palisades, for example, was created, they had unplanned zoning, and that pretty much allowed anything. So today you'd have to change from ag to urban before you could create 10,000 square foot lots. But with unplanned zoning, they just draw lines on a map.
There you go, yeah, so you have all these odd settlement patterns that happened really before zoning came in, having all these odd sized lots. And planning at the time didn't come in and say, oh, that's a 2 acre lot, let's do ag 2 there. They said this whole area we go ag 20. And so you get these 1 acre, 3 acre, 2 acre parcels all zoned ag 20. And that makes 0 sense on that. It confuses people, but that's what we live in right now. That's the situation. So I think that's one of the challenges that's not gonna go away. That makes sense. Okay.
In your lifetime or in my lifetime?
In either.
I think that's kind of here, I
Perpetuity.
think that's kind of here to stay. I think if we could have communities come together and do like more comprehensive planning, we could fix that in certain areas, but it's kind of being too far down the road, but that's just my own opinion on that. Okay, so we got that. You guys are like really astute. You guys probably deal with this stuff all the time.
Every minute.
Okay, good. So if you're going to do a change of zone, you guys deal with that sometimes? Clients ask you about that? What does the property need to be consistent with for it to even move forward on the change of zone?
General plan,
General plan. What part of the general plan?
land use.
And the land use maps, right? The land use pattern allocation guide map that shows where our settlement patterns, and then the next one down from there needs to be consistent with the CDP. And when it's consistent with those elements, it can begin to move forward. Doesn't mean that it makes it there, but at least it can move forward. If it's state land use, if it's a state land use boundary amendment, this is the same with the special permit. If it exceeds 15 acres in size, it's no longer under county jurisdiction. It goes to the state. Which is why you've seen a lot of places, why is that 14.9 acres? Why is that 14.9 acres? Why is that 14.9, 14.9, 14.9, 14.9? And what you used to be able to do was go 14.9, 14.9, 14.9, 14.9, you get your 60-acre parcel all done, parceled out. State Land Use Commission came back and said, that's called parceling, you're no longer allowed to do that. If you do that, they're come together, they're combined, and you have to do the whole thing now at one time. If it's separate ownership, that's a different story. It's the same situation with the special permit. If the special permit request, state land use ag, exceeds the 15 acres, it goes to the State Land Use Commission. If it's less than that, then it stays at the county jurisdiction. The planning commission has the final authority for a special permit. Now, you can have a special permit on a large parcel from a smaller area of land that's less than 15 acres and keep it in the county jurisdiction. So the area on the upper road right before you're getting to Waimea, there's the fueling station out there before the old, or right after the old Saddle Road if you're coming this way, right? That's a special permit. That parcel is like 1,000 acres. And so it's just a, whatever, 14.9 portion of a 1,000-acre parcel, right? So you can do that, and that's a way to get through some of these situations that I think are helpful. You guys really?
I have a question.
Oh, hello.
Hi. So
It might have an answer.
I hope you do. So why is that not an illegal subdivision? And an illustration of that would be like Nori's subdivision on Napapo Road, where he was dinged for the cell tower being a separate parcel and leasing it out without it being subdivided.
At what level? Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, so in your example, you separated out the gas station from a larger parcel. And in this case, it was a cell tower that was also done like that, leased separately as if it was a separate parcel when it wasn't subdivided. And there was an action against that by the county.
I'm not familiar with that one. I've seen that happen frequently. Maybe it was the fact that they wanted to build something else on it. You can't lease out multiple parcels on your place by giving a de facto subdivision.
Yeah,
And that's
I've seen it also in coffee farms in Malka, Kainaliu area.
coffee
where
farmers are usually licensed, and there's a difference between licensing and leasing.
Well, it's a old lease from an old family. It was a large parcel and they drew a map and leased out certain sections of it, you know, for a period of time, I don't know, 40 years or whatever, to people. And people buy and sell these, you know, they're not parcels, they're just whatever, you know.
I'm not
leases.
sure. I'd have to look at that. And you're sure it's not CPR, yeah?
Oh, I'm positive.
Okay, I'll have to look. I don't have a good answer for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's talk CPR real quick. Who loves CPR? Who loves CPRs on ag?
They've had the same owners for 15 years and then try to sell, but their documents are old.
Okay, so this I think is another area that we've made a little bit of adjustment onto and just trying to make sense out of it. So the county allowed CPRs. It's a state process. You could take your ag and basically create lots that are non-conforming by way of the CPR. And what they would do is they would say you have to say it's a 10-acre parcel and you got to end up with 3 CPR lots on it. So your first parcel, the first person in gets their first farm dwelling. Then it was old enough that the second person in got the Ohana. The third person in, they had to apply for an additional farmland
With a farm plan.
with farmland. But wait, they bought it, fee simple, free and clear, that's their area. There's nothing else on their area that they bought, yet you need to have a farm plan, you need additional farm dwelling? Does that make sense? Sure, it makes sense to me. And so what we've done is we've tried to just say, so CPR is basically stopped on it. You guys realize that, right? You know why that stopped?
Yes,
Why?
because Ron Brown, the crazy horse, kind of like took it to the limit, and pissed a bunch of people off with the one way.
That might have been the catalyst. Possibly, I don't know.
You were still.
You're still allowed to do CPR on ag.
Oh,
Absolutely, across the state, no problem.
yeah.
You can still do it.
You have the underlying zone.
You can do it on Aggie. But what happened was that a former planning director saw it as an issue and he made a code change. And he said, if your CPR is residential or ag, you have to meet subdivision code. Everybody stopped doing that because they'd rather go and subdivide. To meet subdivision code, you have to have your zoning, you have to have your density, you have to have your water, you have to have your roads, and all of those factors that go into it that the old CPR kind of got you out of doing. So other counties still do it. There's proliferation of these in other counties. This county, it stopped basically by de facto. You can still do it, but you gotta meet subdivision code. So why wouldn't you just go and do subdivision? And that essentially stopped the CPR. So we have these legacy CPRs, older than 2001, and what we've now tried to do is say, if been subdivided, the county allowed it to be subdivided, the state allowed it to be subdivided, just give each person their first farm dwelling, if it's on it. Just, that's what it is. If you want more, it's additional farm dwelling. But now, we've allowed that, and now the person can actually have their parcel without having to go through kind of ridiculousness just to be able to utilize the land that they bought, and probably had no idea that they had to do an additional farm dwelling, making an application that's probably not even true. But they say what they got to get a house.
So you're saying if you're the second unit of a 2-unit CPR, you can get an additional farm dwelling now?
Third unit.
That's how it was. So now, no more Ohana. So before, it'd be like, basically you get a farm dwelling and then it's all additional farm dwelling. So we see some CPR and it's like, first farm dwelling, additional farm dwelling, additional farm dwelling, and additional farm dwelling. And what are additional farm dwellings supposed to be used for?
Farm workers. Farm workers.
Right?
So I'm not understanding what you're saying, the changes.
The change is that we don't, now if you came in with your parcel and there's a CPR parcel and there's no house on it, you can just get a building permit for it.
Even though the Jason one already had a building permit?
Correct,
As long as the CPR was prior to 2001.
correct. And if it wasn't, it's a subdivision essentially.
When did they change
Yay.
that?
Is that in writing somewhere?
Yeah, it's in the department, you can ask for that. So that's just like a little.
Can it be
nuance, I
on
think.
water catchment?
Yeah, there's
Can you-
no, if it was basically, well, the way that we look at it is, if it was CPR, and this is pre-2001, it's a de facto subdivision. Each one of those lots are treated as its own lot. And whether you use a water catchment system or a well, it doesn't really matter. If you wanted to subdivide now, let's say you had the zoning you want to subdivide, that's where you might need a water variance if you don't actually have the water. You guys familiar with that process?
I looked into that recently and they said that you can only subdivide if you can get if the water department would give you your own separate water meter. And most CPR lots wouldn't meet that threshold.
That is, if they were existing CPR, that's not true. If it's a new parcel and you wanted to do it and you don't have additional water meter, you can't subdivide unless you apply for a water variance, and there's certain criteria that you have to meet for a water variance. That can be very challenging.
With you later on, because we actually have a property that falls in the category and the planning department said that it wouldn't allow it.
Go ahead and email me.
Okay, thank you.
She's iPhone. You get it, you'll know who
I
it
know
is.
exactly who you are, iPhone. I'll put it through your call.
I
You
recognize
know,
your
you
voice.
also, when you change that, you also drop the mandate that all of the other apartment owners had to sign. That was huge.
Thank you, yes, for reminding me that we made that choice too. So yeah, we don't have to, now, before you had to have everybody sign versus, again, I bought a parcel, I bought it fee simple, I was gonna use it for my house. Why do I have to get you, my neighbors, to sign my building permit or to sign for my applications? It just didn't make sense.
Does that change state administration to administration, or is that susceptible to?
I think anybody that would come off of that would be, really open to a lot of, to a lot of pain.
Okay.
Because it's just, I personally just, I'm a simple guy, I try to make simple, logical decisions. That's really where I come from, not smart enough to do anything else, so.
Can we just go back, somebody brought up Crazy Horse, that was not about CPRs, that was about Ohana dwellings and farm dwellings and how many people can live in a house, and all of those things were what Crazy Horse disputes were about, not about CPR. I mean, he got that, created 10 1-acre lots, he got an Ohana dwelling for each lot, which at the time was like, built 20 houses, each one was a one-family dwelling, theoretically. And whether or not they could be rented out, used as apartments, not have any farm use, all those issues were what came up out of that, aren't they?
And guess what? They still exist today, and it's still a nightmare. And we met with somebody who was gonna try to fix it, and their eyes glazed over, and they were just like, I didn't even know where to begin. So yeah, it's still an issue to today. Okay,
What's your pet project?
my pet project? In the department? Really?
That's a really good question.
Pet project. Well, I'd say we started with standing up the EPIC system, the Electronic Permitting and Information Center. Went from taking analog permits to completely digital, nonstop. That was an entire department changeover. That the training from the vendor was completely not enough. So we had to then train all of our people while people were coming in, trying to process their permits, didn't know what to do. Our team members didn't know what to do, so we had to curate all of our own training and respond immediately and process that day after day after day after day, everybody on Zoom until we got it. DPW didn't quite do that, and their experience has been a little bit different. And so that was one small little pet project that we did, minor. We took the general plan, this thing that's kind of the guiding document for the entire island that was stalled out for like 2 administrations. We brought that to now having a final director's recommended draft on the table. Minor project. My little side project is code update, to look at updating chapter 25 and chapter 23 to bring those to the current. Currently chapter 25 is based in 1996, chapter 23 subdivision code is 1983. It's been amended over the years. We did that. My other fun side project has been digitizing all the documents within the planning department. We actually have like a team that works on that, and we sometimes do about 30,000 documents in a week. We actually cleaned the Hilo department. Never been cleaned in 20 years.
You went in the basement in Hilo?
We didn't go in the, no, this is just a department. We don't really have a basement. Hilo Plan doesn't have a basement. We borrow someone else's basement space to keep our little metal things when we go out and do like our open houses. We kind of got to beg for that in the mayor's office. We don't have that. But what we did do is we cleaned the office. And like, never been cleaned in 20 years. Like really clean, like moving desks, reshaping where people sit. So their divisions were all in the same areas, and the dust was wiped off. And I literally have pictures of my truck stacked with e-waste taken to get recycled, stacked with garbage taken out to get there. This was like reoccurring. You know, we take 1 day a month for about 6 months, and we get through it. Couple side projects. Questions?
Where's the general plan right now?
The general plan right now is we are reviewing it, so we opened it up for public comment. We got a lot of good public comments, a lot of good feedback. Now we've taken all those feedbacks, we're working on incorporating the right feedback, readjusting the GP, the general plan, and then that will come out July 29th. We'll be putting out the final director recommended draft. And at that point in time, we'll have some additional rounds for people to look at, but it's gonna move its way into the planning commissions and then move its way all the way to county council, which will hit like next year. But that's pretty much there. So the next draft you're seeing is what's been formed from it.
I haven't really delved into it, but you know, sometimes I'm looking at Maui stuff.
Mhm.
And their map system for the TMK lots has multiple overlays, which is pretty cool. Do we have that capability yet?
Side project. Yes, if you go county department planning website, just Google Hawaii County Planning Department, front page, there's these tiles, one's like apply for a permit. The other one, right down over here, says GIS and maps. You can click on that tile, you get a link there that says GIS. You can open that up and that'll open up your layers. And from there, we have just about every single layer overlay on that map system. You can see the parcels, you can see your state land use, you can see your zoning, you can see permits attached to it, you can see your EPIG map. I believe floods on there, ordinances, subdivisions, special permits, most of all the information. Certain information like water lines aren't gonna be on there, the water kind of keeps that separate. So what we can share on there is on there. It's a great tool. You still wanna back that up by verifying at the department, but it's a really good tool to keep you moving in the right direction. Especially if you're like, is that state land use ag or state land use rural?
Where was that
It's not state
located?
land use rural.
Where's that located?
I'm giving you all a test at the end of this. Planning Department website.
Do you want me to pull it up?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Planning.hawaiicounty.gov.
Little side project was trying to clean up the website a little bit too.
While you're doing that, Kyra has a question.
Yes, and friends online, just yell out because I can't see you without having
Yes,
the
thank you.
owl.
I have a question.
Okay, real quick.
So, speaking of CPRs and the overlay, I've seen on other county websites that CPR maps show up on their tax map overlays. Is that ever something we're gonna have? Because right now, all we can see is the parcel, not the CPR.
I don't know, it's a really good question. I can check with my GIS guy and see what it'd take to get something like that on there. So scroll.
That would be awesome.
I agree with you. So yeah, and if you want to send me a note on that, or Taylor, if you want to send me some notes, they're kind of, we like feedback. Feedback's a good thing. So can you go back one click back? Okay, front page, website. These are like your really important buttons here. Want to submit a permit, applications. The applications also have instructions on there, which are really awesome. But over here, GIS and maps. Click on that. And then go to GIS public data.
Thank you.
Then you have to agree. Okay, now you got some action. Now you're gonna wanna hit that one. It's gonna open up your layers, click the button to open it all the way up. Just the side little arrow down. Okay, now you have access to all your layers. And from there, you can click on, state land use, ALISH, SMA. Great one to seeing where your SMA boundary is. I'd say that's 99.9% accurate. And then you click on there, you can zoom in and out, and then that'll take you into the areas on the island. And it'll actually show the parcels. And probably the easiest thing for y'all is just type in your TMK. Up top of your address, and I'll take you to your parcel specific, and then on the side, you can play around with your layers and access all that awesome information.
I can't remember exactly how to do it now, but I've done it once before. There is a way you can actually take this layering and add it to your Google Maps, to like your specific Google account, so that it layers on your Google map.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I do not know how to do that.
I cannot remember, but I remember doing it
Possible.
once.
Figure it out, let us know.
I will. Somebody has to know. I'll Google it.
Can you print it out?
Can you print it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
See
absolutely.
the printer's right there.
You can print, you can, take screenshots of it, yeah, you got all kinds of opportunity to do that, I see people print it out frequently. And the closer you zoom up, it starts getting all the parcels on there and starts getting, into a lot of good information.
What's the 3 dots next to each one?
More.
Okay, so that's where you can get a lot of good information. There's more information I think people realize that's actually available on the site. And we've tried to make it a bit more easy to use, try to make it kind of 3 clicks to where you need to get to. Before that GIS link was like embedded way back in there, and if you knew how to navigate and do the right clicks, and you might find it. Now it's on the front page. Same with the Epic permitting system. At one point it was like hidden up on the top. How do you even find where to submit a permit, maddening, get it down there, make it easy. So I think this has been a good improvement overall, and I think that there's additional room to continue to improve on these.
Is there any way to find out if like any parcel surrounding a parcel you're working with, it's trying to get a zone change or anything, any kind of change that would require county permission?
Yeah, so if it's a change of zone, you're gonna be if you're a surrounding property owner, you're gonna be notified.
No, I mean, as a realtor, you know, you're researching something, you want to know if the property below you is going to be a golf course or a hotel or something. You're living, you know, in the Kehoe Resort area or whatever. Is there a way to click a parcel to find out if there's an application that's been pending on this parcel for
If you go through the Epic system and you type in the TMK and it's been put in there since we went live with Epic, that'll pull up the actual application that's in there. We've been trying to get all of that. It's been a nightmare, but we've been trying to get all of that open and live to the public. So you could then see it, okay, there's an application, what's the request? Actually open up the application, see the request, see the background report, see all the information. It's been really tough. We had a lot of opposition with opening up public information for a period of time, even though the irony was it's always kind of public information. So we've had to work on kind of separating out the sensitive information and just have kind of the more benign application information on there. So that would be your best one, unless you're getting the notification by the surrounding property owner or you see the sign. The other way would be to check the Epic system. That's kind of like what you'll find with the real property tax where they got DPW with the building permits now. And that's where we're trying to get that communication going out. And then you can always email us and we'll work on getting you a response.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the site that I can maybe answer?
What's the timing now that Epic's up for a permit, new construction?
I just heard you're having glitch. Just want to lunch with somebody.
There's always glitches. We had Bluebeam out for like 2 weeks nationally. Nightmare Bluebeam's with it. So I don't do permits or building permits.
Yeah.
I can say that our average time for a building permit review is 3 days.
So,
Our average time for building permit is 3 days.
In planning.
When I first came in, our West Hawaii was 3 months.
question, so you go on there, and it says, oh, it's been there 4 months, and it says percent completed, 4%.
Yeah.
4 months. You go, okay, that doesn't tell you anything. Doesn't tell you, oh, planning approved it, or DPW, because there wasn't really anything to approve, and the rest is building. Really, it's kind of meaningless.
I'd say it's better than meaningless. It's actually pissed you off.
Yeah. Which is what happened to me this morning.
Who needs coffee when you can go on there and see you've had a building, you've been there for 4 months, and only have 4%? It's something that I have relayed back to everybody that I can to say this isn't right, like, because I've experienced it personally as well. I'm like, I know this isn't at 8%. And it's also telling me I'm not gonna see it actually done for like another 3 months. But I know internally it's being worked on faster and we're trying to get that updated, especially on the building side, so it's real time. That I think is just not working right now.
So when it thinks on like 4%, it'll show you the person that stopped it.
It should show you where it's at, where it's
Yeah.
sitting, and what the issues are.
Yeah.
It should be communication, right? That's the goal, is to communicate as clearly and effectively as you can. It's hard.
I don't know where this system comes from, but I have a neighbor who was an architect on an island in Los Gatos. Epic came in. I mean, that's Silicon Valley, right? 1 to 2 years for a permit would be all electronic. They literally, you cannot go into the planning and building physically.
Interesting. Interesting.
And to me, it's like, it's done the opposite.
I can understand that. I would say from the planning department, that I would say has not been the case. I'd say in other areas that could be the case. I don't think it's the software, I think it's how the software is used in most cases. So for us, with planning, we found it has been quite valuable to be able to track things internally. I don't get things stuck on people's desks anymore. I can see where it is, I can pull metrics a lot better. People can upload information and not have to drive into the department. We can correspond with people a lot more efficiently and effectively. So again, it's how the technology is used, right? We have these awesome phones. Do we just use it as a phone, or do we understand all the rest of it? Some people just use it as a phone. But the better understanding we get. So I think I've heard other jurisdictions that have taken that same software and the same information, and they're at a 2-month process timing. So I've seen it work on the good side as well. The challenge with the Epic system, Epic is what we needed. That was the name we gave it. It's actually, Tyler is the vendor. Tyler would be the equivalent of Microsoft, right? They're the people who create the software. Intergov is the actual platform that we're using. So that would be the equivalent of, say, like Microsoft Teams, right? Microsoft makes it. Teams is now what we're using. So we're using Intergov. And what happened was, instead of having a plug and play system where we're gonna say, here's the software, here's how you use it, and we're gonna train you guys how to use this new software, it came in, this was before my time, they came in and said, let's build something together. Let's take your processes and put them into this electronic system and mesh them together to create a system. Which is why I've been having to rebuild it on the back end since we went live. Case in point. So before an analog permit, you would come in with your permit, you drop it off at the counter, and we would put a timestamp on it, right? To prove you dropped it off. So I come in here and we haven't gone live with it yet. And I'm checking out my team, seeing what they're working on, and they're working on being able to take a digital stamp on the computer, move it over onto a digital document and affix that on there and then put a time in there. So basically trying to create a timestamp through a PDF version to plug onto a digital document. I'm like, it's a freaking digital document, it's already timestamped. Whoa! We stopped doing that. And my point is that trying to take this analog version and merge it into a digital version without really being able to have that time to look at it and play with it is hard. And I will say this, I don't think it's anybody's fault other than the leadership at the time, because what I see is, you guys all know the difference between working on your business or in your business. Right? In your business, you're doing the business, you're hustling. Working on your business is you step back and say, how's my business working? How's my marketing campaign? How's that working? How's my communications working? Instead of just being in it. In the county, it's in it. It's in it constantly, it's always behind, there's always demand, and it's so hard to actually step back and work on it. And that's what that system was basically done while everybody was just scrambling, trying to merge it together. So again, we launched it and then we've been rebuilding it on the back end to make it more friendly for our folks working on it as well as the public. So it's just a rough show.
Bill 108 didn't.
No. Didn't, agreed.
What reliable information does the planning department have on Epic? For example, if you want to know if a property has an STVR registration, can you definitively determine it by seeing whether or not it's on Epic? Or does that just some are in and some are not? And
Some are in or some are not. So it's,
That's what I'm going.
so what happened was we have legacy and we have new. So when we went live, if it's a new application that came in through Epic and is going, that one is now in Epic. If it was done previous to Epic, it's not in the Epic system. And we tried to do a data migration into it, but it didn't quite hit. So what we do now is if you came in for, so say you had an old STBR, you wanted to update it, we will pull that in and get you current into the Epic system. So once we touch it again, we try to fold it into the Epic system so you'll actually have current live information on demand. And it's just that slow migration process of getting all of that in there. But it's really by more reactive than proactive right now. Yes, sir.
In zoning, can you talk about overlays, like overlay districts? I don't know the word we use, but like down in Cairo, for example, there's a resort overlay node, or I don't know.
So that's the general plan LUPEG map.
Okay.
And so that's kind of an overlay that goes over the land. So that's the land use pattern allocation guide map. And so what you're gonna see is,
Solid on the little.
yeah. So you're gonna have, you have various designations in the LUPEG map. You have agriculture, you got low density urban, medium density urban, high density urban, industrial, and then you have resort zoning. So that overlay what you're seeing, and then that relates to, say, Bill 108 and the short-term vacation rentals. If you're in a resort node, which has the overlay of that LUPEG map for a resort, then you're permitted even if you have a residential zoning. That's that overlay that we have. Kauai has like special management area overlays and increased overlays for shoreline setbacks and things like that, where we mainly just do our overlays with the land use maps right now.
So if Puko, for example, said, we want the county to put an overlay on that area to claim it as a resort, so that you.
General plan amendment.
So that's the general plan amendment.
Yeah.
And that, is the county looking at doing any of that proactively versus waiting for people to do it? Saying, hey, Lee Drive, for example, you buy a house, you kind of expect someone's gonna be renting it out, or, I mean, it's just versus in a subdivision, Oolong Estates or whatever.
Sure.
Is the county gonna try to help give other opportunities where it's currently trying to restrict those kinds of things? And say, here are areas where it makes sense, or are they gonna depend on the people to pull together to do that?
Yes and no. And so the update to those areas are coming in the general plan. So we've updated the future land use map. And a bunch of people came together to help with that through the CDP process. They have their own land use maps. So we're trying to take the best information from there and then uplift that into the general plan so it's consistent with what happened there. That's probably about 98% of what we're seeing. What we wanted to do, which is not working, was do like an overlay for like vacation destinations, where say like Volcano Village would be a good example, and the hotels in the area, it might be a good place to actually have unhosted vacation rentals to do that overlay, and it just hasn't worked. It's just been a nightmare.
Because people don't want it.
Well, people don't want it, figuring out how we're gonna put it in there, legislation moving, myriad of different reasons. It might come back up, it's possible.
I have
I think it needs
a
to happen.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Why don't we see what Bissell does on Maui, if he gets the council to go on with his harebrained idea to revoke the 7,000 condos that are vacation renting and multiple family zoning, and just see what kind of nuclear bomb goes off, so we can avoid the mistakes.
So,
Instead of this new bill that's going through the TAR, I mean, why not let them blow it out, and then we can go, wow, we don't wanna do that.
TAR is contemplating hosted rentals, right? Bill 108 contemplated and dealt with unhosted. All the other counties did all of them holistically at one time. Hawaii County did it. And in order to regulate all of those and have hosting platforms work with us and all the rest of it, everything has to have a registration number, which is why this is moving in the way that it's moving. But what we're getting into, I think, on that conversation is around the non-conforming use certificates. Because most of our short-term vacation rentals are in permitted areas. The bulk of ours. Who knows how many non-conforming use certificates we have?
1,200.
700.
100.
I thought it was like 200.
How many?
Gentleman in the back is closest, we have 750 right now,
Good job.
more or less. We started with 950. When Bill 108 was passed and we went through the whole registration process, we had 950 NUCs, split 50-50 on the island, east-west. Now we have about 750, split 50-50 east-west. So there really isn't this thousands of non-conforming use certificates. It's our thousands of STDRs are in our resort node areas or have the overlays of, you know, Waipaloa, Monolani.
Wait a second.
Yep.
Does Heather know that?
So, next question.
There's two questions in the chat
Oh,
here.
let's chat.
Okay, the first question is, where do we find information on new process for building permits on CPR lots? Do we just write in questions on Epic on that parcel?
Yeah, I would say the best thing for that is to us to somehow get that information out to you all.
Yeah, we didn't know that.
This is the price, you know, trying to get information out there. I think that would be the best one, just to share that with y'all, and then y'all can just share it out from there.
When you do good things, you gotta get it out.
Okay.
One person's good thing is another person's treachery.
The second question is there a way to check if house plans are on file? Example, built in 1990, say if someone wants to make a modification to the current structure.
Yeah, I have an answer. No, they're not. They're gone. Actually, DPW basically just would destroy all the house plans. They're gone. We started, the planning department, before my time, started capturing those and actually have somebody that scans them in to try to hold them in some type of archive that we could reference. So there is a slight possibility that they could inquire with us to see if we have something on there, but that would probably be more like 2015 moving forward. Everything old, they don't have it. The good thing is with the digital process now, those will be saved. We will have those. So the next group that sits here in 50 years will be like, digital.
Did you hold on to all the older permits? Yes, got rid of all the original
We
permits?
are like hoarders of planning documents and permits, but the other guys, it's hit and miss. It's really hit and miss with DPW on what they hold on to. We hold on to, you know, every single use permit, SMA permit, TMK, subdivision. I got a lot of documents.
But what about a building permit from 1990?
Well, that's not his.
That's not my department.
Yeah.
I can tell you nightmare stories that I've gone through helping people out on those things. They don't, you know, there's misinformation, there's information missing. It's not well refined, yes.
I believe this is your department. Oceanfront vacant land. Are you gonna let us build on it?
I was gonna get into SMA. Let's talk SMA. Oceanfront vacant land, am I gonna let you build on it? Depends. Give me a little more detail.
Poolco, low lying.
There's no restriction right now.
Okay.
It's your SMA. So what you gotta deal with, you have your flood issues, right? You got your SMA issues. Act 16, who knows Act 16?
I don't.
Yeah, Act 16 is Act 16. It got passed during COVID and nobody was really that aware of it. It just kind of happened and all of a sudden came out with this mandate. What did Act 16 do? Did a couple things. So shoreline, this affects the SMA area. So previously, when I was private sector, I had a client and he had bought a parcel along the Levy Drive somewhere. It was one of those nice little kind of peekaboo little parcels right over there. And he wanted to build something, so it's gonna be a whole permit process. So I was going back with them. I was gonna maybe help him navigate through to do this and going back and forth. And then all of a sudden, this thing, Act 16 hits. And his parcel went from taking a 20-foot shoreline setback to having to have a 40-foot shoreline setback, giving him a whopping like 12 feet of buildable area. And he was SOL. What Act 16 did was it eliminated the 20-foot shoreline setback for shallow parcels. Okay? So you'll see areas, be like, hey, how come that one's 20 feet from the shoreline? Other ones are 40. So 40 feet is the general shoreline setback right here in Hawaii, in the state of Hawaii. And prior to Act 16, it was if you had a shallow parcel, forget the exact depth, you could apply a 20-foot shoreline setback on it. Act 16 took that away.
So is that state or county?
State.
Act 16.
Act 16 is state, done by the Senate, took that away. So it's basically made some parcels not usable unless you go through a shoreline setback variance. which is a really fun process, starting with an environmental assessment, ending with the planning commission hearing. And so we don't see those happening. And so we see parcels have almost gotten not usable for that reason. So that was a huge one. Okay, Act 16 took away that 20-foot shoreline setback. So you have a parcel now that you are representing, you might have sold it, whatever, you're going to buy it, and you see the front of the house, and you're like, shit, that looks like it's 20 feet from the shoreline, what's going on there? And you realize it was built prior to 2020, so it's legal, non-conforming. Right, so now you draw that line at 40 feet. Anything back behind 40 feet, you can expand, you can enlarge, you can do whatever you want. That area here in the front, you can maintain it. No expansion, no enlargement, same footprint.
You can't go up. You
Can't go up, no expansion, no increase, but you can maintain it. And this is one that we see quite frequently, people coming in trying to figure this out. So that's legal, because that was legal when they made it there, but now that front area has a lot more restrictions on it. What did the other thing Act 16 do? It was very strong on no seawalls. No seawalls, and that was really related to the stuff that's happening on the North Shore and on Maui, right? And we have our own issues here with seawalls. And so, one that came in, and some people think I really don't care about things, and I'm just Mr. Co-Development. I'm not. I care very deeply about our place here, about our island. I'm born and raised here. And so, for example, when we came in, there was a particular condo by Hunnell's Beach, and they're worried about sea level rise, sea level coming in, and a seawall is not allowed there, okay? So they said, we're gonna come back off, we're gonna dig in, and we're gonna do an entire trench along here, and we're gonna embed a wall into the ground. But the shoreline was still yet out there, so it wasn't technically a seawall yet. I said, okay, well, erosion, 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 seawall. And I said, what you've done, and they did an environmental assessment, and they just looked at this area right here. They said it's fine. I said, I don't know if it's fine. Because what I see happening over the time, if we say yes and this gets approved, you're gonna build your wall in there, erosion's gonna happen, it's gonna hit the seawall, and then flanking is gonna start potentially occurring. Don't know this is gonna be the case, and next thing you know, Hunnell's Beach is gone. I can never have that happen on my watch. So I said, if you want to even begin to have this conversation, I want to see scientific studies done on how this flow is going to happen when this turns into a seawall and how it's going to affect the beach next door. If we can understand and know that the beach is going to be there, we can have this conversation further. And that's one of the big challenges that we're dealing with.
Okay, I need to have that conversation with you, because I'm vice president there.
There you go. It's the case across the board. I'm dealing with people dumping in boulders, trying to save their place. And so I believe in protecting property, but not at the point of losing precious resources. And there's got to be a balance in how we find that, right? And so really open to solving for those types of things.
Okay, there's 2 more questions in the chat. How do you find out if a lot is a shallow lot?
It's irrelevant now.
Okay, and then the next question is, can you confirm Bill 123 or the Ohana ADU bill is actually going to take effect June 24th as it states in the bill?
No, I'm not going to talk TAR, ADU. We can. I love the ADUs, pro ADU. Real quick, I want to finish my Act 16 rant. The other thing that Act 16 did, which has been a big effect, was it took away the single-family exemption for shoreline permits for SMA shoreline parcels on the shoreline, exempt from the SMA permit. So there's been the single-family exemption for SMA permits, right? You guys familiar with SMA, special management area?
Yeah.
Okay. And so there's an SMA minor and there's an SMA major, and then there's a single-family exemption. Okay. SMA minor permit is $500,000 and below in development, and SMA major permit is $500,000 and above in development. But we've been able to exempt single-family residence as long as it was less than 7,500 square feet. So modest home.
Yeah.
We still exempt single-family residents from having to go through the SMA major process, except for shoreline parcels. Act 16 said that exemption is no longer allowed on shoreline parcels, meaning if you come in to build a home on there and that home exceeds $500,000 in cost, you're going for an SMA major permit and you're going to the planning commission for final approval. You're coming through the department, we're doing a background report, recommendation, and making your way to the planning commission there for final approval to approve your SMA permit for a single family home on shoreline parcels. So now we're seeing them come in all around. We have no control over it, we are completely at the mercy of it. So from the bottom of Paradise Park to Puako to Ali'i, we're seeing them come in. Because it's hard to keep, especially these days, to have a decent home less than 500,000. If your home is less than 500,000, it's an SMA minor permit and doesn't go to the planning commission.
Could we do it in sections?
That would be a cumulative. Yeah, you can't get out of the cumulative impact on that. But you'd be amazed at how many homes I see coming in at like 494, 495. So that's kind of Act 16, big changes, like you kind of know once you know and you're dealing with it, but a lot of people don't know until you're like, oh crap, the rule changed somewhere and how do we deal with that?
When they do these bills, can't they put anything in there for inflation? You know, I mean, cost of building homes went up 50% since 2020, since the bill came in.
I agree, there should be a new number based, for that, that's something you can look at. That will come with a lot of opposition too, right? So that's the challenge is finding this balance. Okay, so that was pretty much Act 16. Are there questions around the SMA process?
What kind of time frame when you're talking about you're going for a major SMA and you gotta go to the planning commission? How many years are you looking at? Is that a years down the road thing?
It can be, but generally not. So you have your pre-work that needs to get done. You gotta actually put your application together, go through all of the application questions, cultural impact, CIA, cultural impact analysis, archaeological, all of those factors, any other drawings. And so that on the front end can sometimes be 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, 3 months, that depends. Once it hits us and once it hits the planning department and we accept the application as deemed complete, we get it to commission in 90 days. We have to get it to commission in 90 days. By law, we get it to commission in 90 days. That's the same for a use permit and that's the same for a special permit. Once the application is deemed complete, we get it to commission within that time period.
Did you say 90 days?
90. If it is a rezone or a state land use boundary amendment, it's 120 days. Once we have 15 days to deem the application complete. And so in the past, sometimes we'd have an application come in, the department would look at it, not quite complete, kick it back. Resubmit it, go through it again, kick it back. Look at it again, and you play this back and forth game and I can't tell you how many papers I have destroyed over the years based on this back and forth. I'm talking thousands. You guys submit, and this was before the digital submittal. This is 20 packets. I'd walk in there with 2 anchor boxes, drop it down, set it in there, just to get the email in 10 days. Your application still isn't complete. That thing, pull it out, get rid of it, try to get it all fixed back in there. So what I did when I came in, I said, we can't do that. What we gotta do is we gotta make sure the application is complete for what it is, not subjective completeness. And so we look at it, is it missing a drawing? That's totally included, get the drawing in there. And then we'll give feedback to say, we've read through it, we think that you're really, really light on talking about the cultural elements or talking about your project. We really recommend that you beef it up, and we return it. Once it comes back in, we take it and we move it forward, and it's like, hey, we gave you warning, this needed to be beefed up, and then it's really your choice on how it's gonna go down the line, just to try to have that one-time feedback loop, but no longer this perpetual return back that can take forever. So generally speaking, we see things, I'd say probably about 8 months. It's kind of the average number for a kind of permit all the way through. Once it gets to the commission, they can defer it. It can take a number of times. You might not have quorum. It could take a few months there. It could take one reading. It really depends. But it opens up for a lot more discussion. So be mindful of the SMA and use the GIS for the boundaries, because as you probably know, the SMA boundary in certain areas goes way in.
Because my understanding is everything along 14 Highway needs an estimate.
What was your question?
Not everything.
Up to kind of a Ali'i Kai, and by the time you get to Seaview though, it varies down.
Yeah, it kind of varies down, and then jogs back up, and you get to like Keauhou, and it goes way up in there. Now, you can have an SMA parcel, so a good one would be like, we got some of those South Kona lots that are really, really long, right? And they're SMA on the bottom, but the top part isn't SMA. Historically, back in the day, this, way before my time, they would say if the parcel touched the SMA, you were in the SMA. And then there was the legal opinion, again, way before my time, that it said, if the project is in the SMA, you're in the SMA, not the parcel. So you could be SMA way down there, you're not touching it, you're not affecting it, and you'd be doing your thing up here, that's not an SMA issue. If you're in the SMA area, even by a little bit, then you have to deal with all the SMA criteria. Make sense?
So a single family home in an SMA area that's not shoreline, but still in an SMA, would that be an SMA minor?
That's an exemption. For a
Oh,
single
it's an
family, it's exempt, yeah. Small commercial wouldn't be exempt, right, and that's kind of where we see the threshold happen on that.
But you said they eliminated the single family exemption.
For shoreline
For
parcels.
sure, got it, okay.
Non-shoreline parcels, all of the old rules still exist, but everything shoreline, that's where the game changed.
Okay.
Anything else? Yes.
Do you expect that there would be anything that the planning department would have to do regarding the requirement for sewers by 2050?
Planning, I'm not seeing us directly doing it. I see us being part of the conversation, trying to help solve for it. Depends, like if law gets passed, like they were contemplating around, like if you have a short-term vacation rental, then you need to get a sewer system, a septic system, then we would by de facto have that to verify, like, hey, you're processing, you gotta do that, but we'd kind of be more caught in the middle of that. So I don't think we're gonna be directly engaged, that's more of a DOH, DPW, PEM issue. But if you think of a way that we can help with it, I'm open to hearing that. It's a big issue, especially for those that don't have a lot of means, it's a huge problem. Which is why we need to actually go over sewer systems. As much of a housing crisis we're in an infrastructure crisis. And it's maddening.
Speaking of housing crisis,
Yes, sir.
Rule 22.
Yes, sir. I don't
Can
know.
we get rid of that? I mean, we got all of South Kona sitting there. 5-acre lot subdivisions, 1-acre lot subdivisions. And I remember when a previous planning director, several planning directors back, we had a meeting, public meeting. We had people come into the meeting, and Wes Thomas was there, Christian Saki. She gave the planning director an engineering study done by the state of Texas about catchment systems. He wouldn't even read it. And then he passed Rule 22.
Yeah, what's Rule 22?
Rule 22 affects anything catchment subdivision.
Rule 22 is your
It's your basic
It's your variance.
blockage against new affordable housing.
is your variance process. So the concept was to stop the substandard subdivisions.
Well, I think it was really more about stopping subdivisions in West Hawaii for me, because you got 60 inches of rain.
I know, it's kind of odd, right? It's like,
Right, yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
that's not,
And to me, what that does is, we're talking political theory,
Oh, yeah.
have the demand, which the west side has the demand, and you want money to be spent in Hilo and it's coming from here, you just restrict development. And then when you restrict development, then the prices just keep going up, and the taxes keep going up, and the homes are less affordable, and then you blame it on SDVR, And that's where we're at. I mean, it's a completely insane
we can,
plan.
it's not
Just
just.
add to what Dave said. Can I add to what Dave said? So, you mentioned the long skinny parcel that was a SMA at the bottom, and I actually had the listing on that and inquired about subdividing and found out the hard fast rule is all you could get is 6 lots if it's below 600 foot in elevation because of the rainfall and the concern about catchment. But when you think about catchment, it's really three factors that determine how much water you're going to have in your catchment tank. It's how much rainfall there is, how much roof area you have to catch that water, and how big your water tanks are. So you could actually catch more water at 12-foot elevation if you had all those large capacity things than you could at 2,000 feet with, a small shed and a little tank, or a barrel, so it just isn't logical to me.
I don't disagree with you. I grew up on catchment. I had a growth stunt. It's kind of stunted on my growth through catchment.
But about 4 or 5 years ago, when half of our wells went down in Kelowna. Okay, I had a house at Pualani Estates, they had a big tanker park there. I have a place in South Kona that I couldn't possibly even use all the water I had, it was overflowing out of all my tanks. I mean, they should encourage catchment, not discourage it.
It's a sustainable approach. There's a lot of positive elements to it. Politically speaking, it is a hot button and it is a nightmare.
Good for weight loss.
So, I've thought a lot about Rule 22. I really have, whether it's adjusting, the limit, whether they're adjusting the number. I've thought a lot about that when it comes to the rezoning and the concurrency side of it. There's an analogous issue there as well that we deal with all the time, and that is the concurrency law needing water for any rezoning. And it hurts a lot of local families, right? So the typical call that we'll get is, hey, I got 20 acres, we own it, I want to split it into 3 parcels so I can give it to my kids, right? But it's zoned Ag 20, and I just want to zone it to Ag 5. And we say, do you have county water? They say no, and we say, well, you're screwed. You're dead in the water, can't have it.
That's what I'm talking about.
And that's not Rule 22, that's concurrency law within Chapter 25, that's to get your rezoned. This is harder, and it sucks. I do not like it.
Even Rule 22 says if you go beyond 6 lots, for example, they have to be 20 acres.
Correct, an average of 24 extensity, average of 20 acres in size. And the same issue comes true, I get the call frequently, and when I was here, and then the private side of it was, hey, I got my 20-acre parcel, we've lived here for, 20-something years, I want to split it so I can sell off of it and pay for it, we can retire and be done. Do you have county water? They say no, and I say, I'm sorry. And that so some type of change should happen there, especially for supporting families and smaller type developments, I completely agree with. Now, the challenge with Rule 22 is this. Somebody like me goes in there and does that. We go public hearing. I will have people come out with pitchforks and shovels and machine guns and the rest of it, telling me I am the most horrible person you can imagine. And I might have one person show up.
And that's the problem with most of it, is the people that don't want to show up and the people who want it don't.
And it's just hard. And so, if you really want to see something like that change, you need to get some critical mass going. Things need to be support around it. There needs to be like a real concerted, holistic effort to have it not further divide our island, further divide our community, because that's the issue with a lot of these land use issues, is they just divide our community. They really do.
Is the primary reason for objecting to it, for bringing a pitchfork, just because they don't want to see more density, or what?
Well, yeah, I got my house, I don't want anything else to happen, don't build by me, nothing else can happen, I hear it all the time.
Game players.
Just constantly. And that's what shows up at a lot of the meetings. I mean, down to the point of, I bought my house 2 years ago, I'm so lucky I got my house. There can't be any more development.
Go back.
It's like, it's frustrating. Not any y'all.
Well, I think one of the problems there is the people that have lived here, grown up here, they're working so many jobs, they don't have time
To
to
show
go
up.
to it, and there's no
Yeah,
newspaper
midweek,
anymore.
midday
I don't
meeting.
really understand what's
Sit there
going
for
on.
5 hours.
So, I mean, when
Wednesday at 10
when
a.m.
the tax
working.
department brought in a new assessor over here and started rescinding all of the ag exemptions, no Alta, because Hilo told it to. how much money can he get? You know, that's what it was all about. And I must have had 24 people came into me that born and raised here, typically, and go, what happened? My taxes went from 2,500 to 25,000 with no notice. The county goes, well, you can appeal it, but you lost your exemption, so now your new assessment's up here.
Sure.
So we'll give you your homeowner thing back or whatever, but you're starting from here, not here.
I get it, there's a lot of challenge there, fortunately, that's not my department.
I know.
I'm not guilty for that, I'm guilty for a lot of other things, it even happened before I was born. Once you take this position, you're just guilty. We'll go with this gentleman and that gentleman.
So the state passed a bill that says counties have to now allow 2 ADUs per parcel, and they're giving, the government hasn't signed it yet, but as far as I know.
Yep.
But the counties now have to come up, have 2 years to come up with a plan on how they're gonna deal with that. What's our county's response to that, and?
We liked it, we supported it, we encourage that, we think ADUs are very, very important. And what we've done is we took the Ohana code and gutted it and turned it into an ADU code. And part of the reason we even want to change the nomenclature away from Ohana because you can actually get funding now on ADUs. And so we wanted that to be consistent, and you can actually use the ADU revenue to offset your mortgage. And so we didn't want lenders having to deal with the folks oftentimes in the mainland and be like, an Ohana?
Right.
What is an Ohana? That's not an ADU. And so we said we need to change the name. So part of that package that so many people love so much, especially Bill 121, has Bill 123, which is the ADU bill. That basically says just about any zoning, ADU, any size. Right now, there's no limit on number and no limit on size.
On size of parcel, the limit on size.
No, it's really contingent upon your infrastructure.
What about ag?
So,
Ag, yes, if you're not. There you go. So yes, unless you're state land use agriculture. If you're state land use agriculture, the only way you get an additional dwelling is an additional farm dwelling, and it has to be used for farming related activities. But if you actually have farmers and somebody's actually farming, we like to give additional farm dwellings to folks. It's a good thing. We want to support farmers.
Yeah, but the 40-hour per week,
That's not the case.
that's not the case.
No, you gotta come in and you gotta demonstrate you're doing the ag.
So could you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like there's been a lot of different policies over the few years. That
Sure.
It's been impossible to get that funded.
Yes, so, okay, great. So there's a lot of confusion, and quite frankly, there's not great policy in place around the AFDAs or additional farm dwelling application agreements, we call them additional farm dwellings. And so previously, you needed to prove 20 hours a week, right, that you're doing in there to make that work. Now we look at it and just make come in and tell us what you got going on. And if you're doing ag and it looks like ag and it quacks like ag and it walks like ag, we want to support you. If you come in and tell me I need additional farm dwelling and I'm growing 3 avocado trees, that's not real ag. But if you have 3 avocado trees, some lychee, some volume on there, the first one's not too bad. From there, if you wanted to scale up, like I met with the Baby Cukes folks out in Waimea, right? They're doing some good things out there. And prior to coming in, they saw me and they were pissed. Like, we can't get additional farm dwellings, you guys are making us rip down our greenhouse. The rest of us said, no, you guys are doing real ag. How many additional farm dwellings do you guys need? Let's talk about that, because they have revenue, they're doing real ag. And I said, your biggest challenge is gonna be your wastewater. And so we're able to work with those folks. Like, that's not a problem. It doesn't need to be based on hours anymore. You need to have your GE license, you need to demonstrate you're doing ag, you need to have a real farm plan, and then you need to actually do the darn farm plan.
So the previous guidelines was no farm plan for the primary farm.
That's for your first farm dwelling.
Yeah, and then
Still the
it
same.
was 8 hours per week for the first additional and 40 hours per week for everyone after.
Sure, those guidelines are not there. Your first farm dwelling is a regular building permit process, come in, that's what we do. Your next one after that, right now, is just demonstrate what ag you're doing and who's gonna be, how you're gonna have the person living there.
And however many you need based on the plan.
has to make sense, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Just,
You know, realistically, the majority of farmers cannot make a living off of agriculture alone. And if they were allowed to have at least one ADU and supplement with rental income, it would give them income and it would make affordable housing. It would kill two birds with one stone. And, you know, why are they so adverse to that?
it's a state on that level. Because they're taking an Oahu-centric kind of look at it, where you do have really prime ag in Oahu, you do
Yeah,
have
they got
severe
prime.
urbanization, right? And so it's different. What I will say is you can rent out your additional farm building. But the person that lives in it is supposed to be doing work on your farm too. So you could say, you're doing X amount of work on the farm on any given week, and you're paying rent, and there's a differential. We don't regulate that side of it. The hardest part that I see, which I think we need to actually have like a systematic change on that, is I'm a farmer today, doing real ag, and I can prove that I can do an additional farm building, and we prove that, and I'm growing my ag and things are going good, and I build another additional farm building because they're doing real ag, things are still going good, and I build another additional farm building, and I'm scaling up, and then fast forward 50, 60 years, and I'm old, I'm tired, and I'm just not feeling like farming anymore, and my kids don't want to take it over, and I say, you know what, I just can't do it anymore, and I gotta let the farm go. Okay, now you have the farm that's not in farming, and you have 4 houses here. What do we do? What do we do? Because for those to be legal, legitimate, the person living in those is supposed to be doing some farming. But the farmer doesn't want to farm anymore, the person that bought it didn't want to do it. So my hope would be that at some point on the state level, I wish we do at the county level, would be that if there was a legitimate farming operation that occurred and it cycled out and those homes are there, that those homes could be rented at an affordable rate. Within a certain AMI, and you can rent them out at an affordable rate. So you're hitting another, affordable housing is a really big deal. So then those homes are at least housing people at an affordable rate, helping meet our goals if farming is no longer an option. Otherwise, are we supposed to tear those houses down? Are we supposed to let them sit vacant? It's kind of tragic. So it's like not really thought out. It's still kind of, maybe had worked in the 90s, but it's really such a different world now. Yes, sir?
Can you elaborate on the deficiencies of the infrastructure? We keep hearing the term sort of shovel ready and all that kind of stuff. But the truth of the matter is that the water situation isn't good. The HELCO might be 3 to 4 years away to doing major work in the subdivision. And zonings and all the other complications. I don't see anything between Keauhou and the airport, for example, that looks like a reasonable project for maybe 100 or a couple hundred units. So do you see any, you've done a good job along Hinalani, sewer coming down, that's important stuff, but we're still, having a water shortage in that same area and all those kind of things. Where do you see, other than that's very popular to put in some housing, where do you see other than Waikoloa Village, something really happening?
So other than Waikoloa Village, for infrastructure, the reason why Waikoloa is working is because of private infrastructure.
Yeah,
So here, right, so unfortunately, I don't see anything happening fast enough to meet our demands. That's my humble opinion. It's gonna be argued what our sustainable yield is. Based on what I'm seeing, there is sustainable yield. It's just obstructed in the way the Seymour goes. We can't pull water. Oda Well is a prime example. There are 2,000 units ready to go in up there, funded millions of dollars from the state. And because Oda Well has been shut down by Seymour, those units aren't being built. So we have that issue right there. We have the water department that is not so inclined to build new systems. That's not their model. Their model is to really, I want to serve our customers, I want to maintain our customers. So what we're dealing with is an issue of scale and offsite CapEx, right? And the big projects, they're no longer around. So you have a lot of smaller projects that don't pencil collectively. So what is it going to take to get that done? It might be a improvement district. It could be a CFD. So what happened, who knows what a CFD is?
Like the Melrose, is that what you're thinking?
community facilities district.
Yeah.
And so it's used in the mainland all the time. And so the sewer line that's coming down Hinalandi was a CFD. The county did not fund that project. It's not a county funded project. The county helped fund that project.
14 million.
Something like that.
Who paid for it?
The developer, so what happens is, a CFD, Community Facilities District, you can take a parcel of land and you can then basically go through an agreement with the county that the county will back you and guarantee a loan. That will then be sold in for bonds, not at the great rate that the county gets, they're almost kind of a junk rate bond, so I don't even know what it is now, but I know that one came out, which one, like normal rates are like at 4, that one's coming in at 6%. You can take the value of the property and leverage up to 30% of that. So if you had a $50 million parcel, you can leverage up to $15 million. And then you can build the facility, and then you can back charge all the roofs in there to pay their proportionate share, amortized over, you know, a 30-year period to pay it back. So it's a way to front load, leverage the infrastructure that the county kind of uses our credit to do it, but it doesn't negatively affect our credit rating. So it's a really good process. Same with TIF, like tax increment financing, but people are really in opposition of these types of things. So I've been saying that's what we need to do, is actually get into creative financing that other people have done, whether it's a TIF, whether it's a CFD, improvement district, and work towards those to actually get the infrastructure in that we need, because without it, it's not happening. We know where it needs to go, we know what needs to happen. It's actually having that mindset to get it done and to focus on there and having a functional plan for that, and that's something that I feel like we're missing, especially from a sewer standpoint. You know, water could be a lot easier to solve if you're doing catchments or wells. That's not the hardest one to solve. The hardest one to solve is where does the waste go?
Or in our harbor.
I want to go to Honokawa, right? And we need to solve for that, and that's a legitimate issue. But that's how we're gonna I think that's how we're gonna solve for it. I was part of the TOD, Transit Oriented Development Working Group with the state, and we use kind of the Onike corridor area as kind of a pilot of what would it take to get the infrastructure in there to do the density, and it's millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And we're stuck with that, yes?
So how do we get involved with the Kona CDP to integrate floodplain and transit-oriented districts? You know, how do we, I've been going to the meetings and I don't feel like we have any traction in planning for Kona.
The floodplain side of it's really gonna be DPW, Department of Public Works. And I think talking and working with them is gonna be the key, because if it's with planning, they're like, that's not a planning issue. I think it is a planning issue, you know, conceptually, but the way that the jurisdiction is really bifurcated amongst the departments.
And I need to bring up the Richard Block property that has tentative subdivision approval in a floodplain, and that's planning to.
Absolutely, and I'm very familiar with that project. I've talked to DPW about it, and we're trying to figure out how they can actually take that over. That's what they're like, we're interested, they think there's value there, so it's, that conversation's currently.
One more thing, Hanaiki Community Park, Coastal Park, there's about, I think, 200 ponds there, and I have videos of it just full of algae and junk, and I'm trying to work with Hanaiki Resort and Parks and Rec to get it cleaned, and they said we need a special management permit, but I looked it up and it says planning director could give a special permit. Is that something they talked to you about yet?
I do not think I've had that conversation.
I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, I'm open to that, I'm definitely about
I
cleaning.
think there's another question on, Marissa, go ahead.
Well, you were talking about the new procedures for getting a building permit on CPRs. Is it complicated at all when it's ag? Or does it matter what the zoning is, or is it just all CPR properties?
No, we're just trying to treat the CPR like a regular parcel, that's the concept.
Okay.
It's just any other parcel that you would have had that was subdivided, that you can own, fee simple, free and clear, as a parcel that we're gonna charge you property taxes on, just get a building permit for it. And if anybody at the planning department says anything other than that, you let me know.
Okay, and then I was hearing the discussion about the, you know, what was being required in terms of the, you know, to grow or to permit or to show you're using a business, and where would we find the kind of standard on that in terms of, like, we have all these lots that are on ag and they're not farms, they're 1 acres. You know, I live on a 1 acre ag and there's nobody in Kona Heavens that farms. So, you know, when you go to issue a building permit on an ag, you know, lot, is there still requirements for that? I was hearing some of your discussion, but not all of that on that.
Yeah, there's a little box that you basically sign de facto that says you're going to be doing some type of farming, whether you're cultivating rocks or grass or weeds.
Apple tree.
Correct. Anything like that, that's kind of the de facto thing that's been for many, many, many years, that we basically just, there's a little signature there and that's it. Nothing more right now. The Oahu would like us to do more of that, but we're in no place to do that.
Okay, so it's perfectly acceptable for somebody to grow their own food, which we do, but not
Absolutely.
acceptable on ag.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
family farm.
You can grow lichen. I'm good at growing moss personally. Okay. Last 2 questions. I'm gonna do 1 question more online if there is, and 2 more in here, and then we'll let you all go. Yes, sir.
Getting a building permit on a CPR unit, I know about that because Dave Lucas gave me this memo that you wrote, and his policy is created by these memos. I don't know if they're just internal memos, but can we see them anywhere? I only know that because he gave it to me, and I would never have known it, and that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I
Nobody
mean,
else knows.
we try to get the memos that are relevant to the public, we try to get them out there and do that. I can try to get some type of platform for those on there. Certain
Yeah.
memos are not necessarily for the public, it might just be like how internally we're doing something, so not all memos would be relevant to that. I think that's an issue
But
that
they
we struggle
totally
with.
changed policy, and there's no way for anybody to find out about it.
Correct, and so I think that that's something that we can work on making a little bit easier and circulating through membership.
If you get it to Taylor and one of these water.
Then it's done.
It's done, everyone will know.
Okay, got it.
We're the new newspaper.
Is there something that we realtors could do better when we visit your office?
That was a good question.
Take
Don't
Miyagi,
abuse the
bring treats, I swear.
Yeah, I mean, I think realizing that, I think, okay. When I took the position over, I had a fair amount of experience with the department, right, working with folks. And after I was in there for a little while, I would get the question frequently, so, the planning director, you're in there, what's the big thing? Like, what was the big surprise for you, okay? And I said, you know what, after being in there for a little while, I would say overall, like, our staff is dedicated to working hard, serving folks, trying to do their very best. Like, these people are they're not leaning on the shovel. They're really trying to work, not all, but I'd say the majority of them. Really, and I was actually shocked at the dedication, the overtime, just the push on it. What I was really surprised about was the lack of systems, the lack of organization, the lack of actual structure, and that didn't exist. So I say that to say, what can you all do is have empathy for our people that we are trying and work with them. If they may not know, let's get through the answer that you do know. But if we can all do this in kindness, even if we're not getting the right answer, it's just gonna make for a better place. And so just that understanding of empathy will go a long way. And that's the same thing I try to instill into the department, is treat people how you want to be treated. You know what, if you want to treat yourself like crap, then treat them how you want somebody that you love treated. If it's your mom, if it's your aunt, if it's your dad. But that's how we want to treat people. Show some empathy, and sometimes we gotta say no. Here's why we're saying no, or here's your other options that you could do to get there. To have more of a working relationship instead of us and them. It shouldn't be like that. These are members of our community working to try to serve us. It's a hard job. It doesn't pay good. It really is. And so just that, I'd say leading with kindness is great. My team generally has great things to say, so almost doing pretty good.
Well, I will say that the difference you can tell by planning directors is because you have so much power, because you're the director. Previous planning directors the last good one was Bobby Jean. The ones in between you and her, I'm giving them the buzzer.
No comment.
And they were dictators. I mean, Michael Yee came to a board meeting, we were doing the Bill 108, and he says, my goal is to get rid of all the SDRs. Okay, thanks for telling us. Why are we here? What do we tell our clients?
And I understand that.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do, and it's my community too, right? I take that approach, whether I'm in this seat or I'm on the other seat, I wanna be able to dialogue and interact and say, hey, whether I'm in the seat or not, tried our best, or doing our best to be fair and reasonable.
Right, you're doing a great
And to
job.
move
Yep.
our island in
Thank
positive
you.
direction, so.
Pass your-
Thank y'all. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time.
Of course, this is good.
And it's Pauhana.
We need more of these.
Well, I'm welcome to come back, you can get me far enough out in
Okay.
this book.
Good.
I'm gonna get a hold of you, I'm working with the guy right now,